Hi everyone, let me ask you a question. Have you ever tried to explain what you do to your family and friends and gotten a blank look? Or is fear holding you and your online business back right now? Now, if you answered yes to either of those, you're going to love this month's free newsletter. How do you get a copy? Head on over to writecom.com now. And by the way, if you want to make more money with your online business, you are going to love our coffee bean money making idea inside. So head over to Writecom, that's WRITECOME.com, and you'll find the newsletter waiting for you over there. Hi, this is Barry here, and you are very, very welcome to today's podcast episode from writecom.com. And today's podcast episode is entitled, Don't Get Wrapped Up in the Numbers. Now, how many times has a number made you green with envy, made you feel less than you are, or simply made you want to give up? I'm sure there's plenty of times. You know, like the comparison game, it's a game that we can never win at. And sometimes focusing on the numbers can really, kind of dampen your day or make you want to give up. When you see someone who has thousands of people following them on social media, or they have millions of subscribers on YouTube, it's a lot of us, when we see those numbers and compare those numbers with where we are, it can get really disheartening and you want to give up. Now, if you have seen some numbers recently that have made you feel this way, well, hopefully today's podcast episode will help you, because I'm going to give you a couple of things that maybe you should keep in mind when you are just looking at those numbers and feeling a little bit downhearted. Now, the first thing I would say to you is that everyone starts with one. It's easy to look at that podcast owner who has 1 million downloads, or it's easy to look at someone who's making $1,000 a month, or it's easy to look at someone who has a really successful business that's been running 10 years. But if we had a time machine, we would find that maybe that podcast owner at one stage maybe had to create 10 podcast episodes before they got their first listener. And maybe that person who was making a killing and making a fortune every month, maybe they had to struggle along maybe for 6 months before they made maybe $10 a month. And that business that's really successful right now, I'm sure if you went back to the early stage when they first opened their door, or the first time they just switched on their website, they were probably met with the sound of crickets. And just because you might be there right now doesn't mean that that they had a better start than you had, because chances are good they probably had to start with one as well. And for you to get to the big numbers that you'd love to be at, you're going to have to go through the small numbers first. You're going to have to go from 1 to 2, you're going to have to go from 2 to 3, from 10 to 20, and all through it is to get to those big numbers. So don't be disheartened if you are at the low numbers right now, because all of us had to start that way. And again, too, when it comes to numbers, just keep in mind that some numbers are more valuable than others. It's easy to think that the number 1 equals 1. But when you think about it, it doesn't really, because if you compare $1 with 1 Bitcoin, the value is completely different. If you compare a one-parent family, who maybe that one parent is really invested in their child, that really can be compared to a 2-parent family where both parents don't really give a stuff about the child. And making an income of maybe $300 a month can't be compared to working in a cubicle job that you detest, even though you're making $600. Those $300 might seem less, but there's a lot of heartache, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of not having to be around those people that will make those $300 seem a lot better than those $600. And the same goes for the numbers, that we get envious of. When you look at someone who has a podcast with maybe, say for example, maybe 10,000 listeners, you would find that if you probably study those numbers a little bit closer, you would find that maybe there's only a small amount of people that show up every time that they release a podcast episode. Maybe there's only a few people that listen to every single podcast episode. And you'll find that the majority of other people probably only show up sporadically, maybe aren't even listening to that podcast. So it's easy to look at that big number and assume that that is a great number. And again, too, how many times you find maybe someone has a huge social media following, and then you're going through their newsfeed, and then you find that hardly anyone is commenting on their posts, hardly anyone is sharing their content, liking it, and then you're wondering, somebody with all these followers, why are they, not getting as much interaction? Why is nobody sharing their content? So to look at that big number, it does look impressive. But when you look at the nitty gritty, it might seem not as impressive as it once was. And again, too, if you compare someone who maybe is writing fiction, if you are releasing your books for free over on Wattpad and you brag to everybody, well, I've got 20,000 readers on Wattpad. But how can you compare that to maybe someone who maybe is on Amazon who has only 1,000 readers, but those 1,000 readers are actually paying for the books? So you've got 20,000 people on one side who are reading books for free, but then you've got someone on the other side who's only got 1,000 readers, but those readers are actually paying for that content. Again, the numbers don't match up. Sometimes some numbers are far more valuable than others. And again, too, when it comes to numbers, you will find that no one brags about low numbers. How many times has someone bragged about winning $1 on a scratch card? How many times have you seen someone on social media bragging that they've only got 1 subscriber on YouTube? Or post that their website is quiet, that they have no customers? No, they don't. You'll only find people bragging when they have a sign of success. And it's almost like they will set up, have a St. Patrick's Day parade and marching bands where they are bragging off, this is my millionth podcast download, or this is my millionth subscriber, or these are how many people are following on social media. Everybody likes to brag when they're doing well. We like to tell everybody that we're winning. And again, it's easy for us to point the finger at someone else and say, oh yeah, they're puffing out their chest, they're pounding the chest, and they're just brag. But we all do it. We all like to tell everybody else that we're doing well. So when it comes to the numbers and maybe just being a little bit disheartened, that is 3 things I would get you maybe just to pause for a moment and just think about that. Because as I said, everyone starts with 1. You're going to have to go through the low numbers to get to the big numbers. Some numbers are more valuable than others when you study them. And then finally, no one likes to brag about low numbers. There's a good chance someone is bragging about their big numbers because they're just showing off. So don't get disheartened. Don't look at that number as a reason that you need to give up. Chances are good. Maybe the numbers you have right now are maybe better than what that other person has. So keep going. Keep focusing on your own numbers. And as I said, the numbers game is a game that you're never ever going to win. Because even when you do reach those levels, you will find somebody else further along the journey will have even better numbers than you. Have a lovely day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like more from the Writecome.com podcast, be sure to subscribe now for more tips, tricks, and ideas you can use to make more money from your words. See you in the next episode.